This is a scripted dialogue based on my actual conversations with the various conservative Christians on the topic of biblical morality. Some of these Christians are more congenial, some more combative. Note how often they try to skirt issues by making related but not really relevant observations. I mark these attempts at deflection with this symbol. Genocides.
It's God's role to rule nations. He lifts nations up and tears them down.
But the biblical God is very cruel in the way he does that.
Is it cruel to punish wicked people?
It's cruel to punish an entire group of people, every last one of them, the men, the women, the children, the infants, and the animals. Destroy them all, the Amalekites. Yes, that is cruel. They all deserved it. Is that your position?
I guess we're back to the question of original sin.
Wait a minute, I don't see the connection. Why is it okay to kill an entire group of people because of original sin? Oh, okay, I think I know what you mean. Because everybody deserves it anyway.
That's exactly right.
So you're saying babies deserve to be killed. And animals. Animals deserve to be killed. That doesn't make sense. Animals are not guilty of sin.
Animals don't have an immortal soul.
So what's the point of killing them? It's just gratuitous violence. It's just barbarism.
That's neither here nor there. Let's get back to people. The Bible teaches that we are all sinful by nature.
Okay, but before you go on, let me say that I accept that is what the Bible teaches, but know that I do not accept that claim is true, that everybody is evil. So you think everybody's so evil they deserve to die?
Yes, God's standard is that you are to be without sin. Okay, I understand you cannot accept that, but you're not looking at it from God's point of view.
Actually, I think I am, from a more reasonable God's point of view.
You're looking at it from a human point of view.
No, I'm looking at it from my God's point of view, a more credible God.
You have reason, you have feelings, but those things are flawed according to the Bible.
So you think normal reasoning is flawed, but the biblical God's commands to kill entire tribes are not flawed? If the biblical God tells you to slaughter an entire neighboring tribe and take their land, you're going to say, right, give me my sword. Not me. I'm going to say, what are you talking about? That's their land, their homes. There's some good people over there. I know a lot of them. This is not God talking. It's greedy human beings talking, wanting land and claiming God told them to take it.
I know the Old Testament can often appear to be harsh, but it's very clear from the New Testament that God has entered into a new covenant with human beings, which is different from the Old Covenant.
So killing entire tribes was okay then, but it's not okay now?
That's exactly right.
I cannot accept the idea that a large group of people are evil, every last one of them.
Well, I would say that everyone is evil.
But they're not. I'm not evil. My father wasn't evil. My atheist friend's not evil. That is such an unhealthy worldview. It's not true.
God has made clear that his standard is that you never sin. Can you say you've never sinned?
Can I say I've never sinned? Yes, I can say that. I can say that. You hear me? I have never sinned. Significantly. I add that on because what am I, perfect? No. But I have never sinned significantly. I've never done anything significantly immoral. I've never hurt somebody just for my own gain.
God's standard isn't significant sin, it's any sin.
I think it's significant sin.
God's revelation is that you must not sin at all.
But then according to your Bible in Romans, it says there is no one who is righteous, no, not one. So everyone is going to hell. Oh yeah, right, okay. And that's why we need Jesus, right, to save us from hell.
That's right.
Yeah, that's your basic theology, but I don't buy it. I do not buy it. I think it's nonsense.
It's a circular argument, I understand, but it's a beautiful circle.
I don't think it's beautiful at all. I think circular reasoning is a method of living in a fantasy world. It's turning your back on legitimate reasoning. I've heard atheists say that we are more moral than God. We would never give a child a fatal disease. We would never destroy a person's home with a hurricane. But God does. We would have stopped the Holocaust of World War II, but God did not. We, in a very real sense, are better than God.
And I'm trying to say to you that your argument isn't with me, it's with God. It's going to be with God on the day of judgment.
Right. And I have no qualms whatsoever in facing your God because I know your God does not exist. He can't. He's too evil. I mean, look at, he drowns everybody in the flood, right? Including all the animals.
Yes.
Then he's nasty, isn't he? That's an unkind, wicked, unloving God. He doesn't even care about millions of animals drowning. Isn't that a nasty God?
No, he created all things. He owns all.
So he can do what he wants. Okay, logically, the drowning of all the animals does not refute an all-powerful God. But it does refute a good God, a loving God. Your God is not kind.
He is so good that he will not tolerate wickedness.
What is the sin of a baby antelope? Oh, he's a very sinful creature, needs to be drowned. Did you ever see a dog drown? That's heartrending, but your God doesn't even care.
It is heartrending, and I'm not in favor of people drowning animals.
But your God is.
An animal does not have an eternal soul.
That's beside the point. Animals have feelings and can suffer as much as humans can. What, does that mean I can torture a dog if I want?
No, that would be needlessly cruel.
Exactly. That's what your God is. Needlessly cruel.
If you were starving, would you eat an animal?
Yeah, I would. I eat an animal every time I eat a hamburger, but that's another issue. I know an atheist who poses this question on the flood story. If God asked your advice, should I drown all the animals or should I just make them go poof? He calls it his drown or poof argument. I would say poof. I mean, you're God, you can do anything, just make all the animals go poof. You don't have to drown them. That is very mean.
Well, God isn't asking my advice.
Well, let's say he's not asking your advice, but he asked you what your preference is. It would be poof, wouldn't it?
God doesn't deal with hypotheticals, and he doesn't explain all of his ways to us. God had decided that the Amalekites should be wiped out because of their wickedness.
Yeah, but say you live back then and you're a soldier. You're going to go and kill little kids and animals? I'm not going to do that. That's just so wrong.
I don't know what I would do, and you don't know what you would do either.
No. I know what I would do. I would not kill a little kid.
You can't say what you would do in a different situation.
I know myself well enough that I am not going to do that. I am not going to do that. I will never kill a person without a damn good reason. I will never kill people so that greedy barbarians can take over their land, which is what I'm convinced was really going on in the Old Testament and the Amalekites. And if there's an animal and a little kid left over from an attack, am I going to say to myself, well, I was told to destroy them utterly, so I better run my sword through every human and animal left alive? I'm not going to do that. I know I'm not going to do that. I suspect you wouldn't either.
I'm very skeptical of making a judgment about what, hypothetically, if I had lived 10,000 years ago. It's just speculation, mine and yours. If I had been an ancient Israelite, what would I have done? It doesn't do any good to argue.
It does do good to argue. It does do good to imagine yourself actually in that situation, to understand the reality of such a situation. In fact, any soldier going off to war at any time in history would be wise to contemplate the reality of what he's getting into.
I know what was right for them to do, which was to obey God.
I know what was right for them to do, which is not to listen to barbarians claiming to speak for God. You have to imagine yourself actually in that situation, being told to kill every kid and animal. You would know it was wrong if you actually experienced it. That's why I say the hypothetical is important. I mean, your God orders the Hebrews to actually kill the Canaanites, not hypothetically kill them.
God had determined that they were completely wicked and they needed to be destroyed.
Yeah, according to the Bible, but I can't accept that. Cannot accept that an entire group of people, every one of them is evil, as well as their animals. No large group of people is completely wicked. In World War II, after we defeated Hitler, did we go in and kill all the Germans? No. We killed Nazis, but we didn't kill all the Germans.
Right, we did not have a command from God to do that.
That's right, and the same thing applies to this story. The Hebrews did not have a command to kill all the Amalekites.
But they did. It's different if God told them to, if God is king.
If. That's the whole point of this discussion. If the biblical God is the real God. Yeah, I concede that logically, if this is God, then it's okay to slaughter whole groups of people. It's okay to be bigoted against gays. It's okay to kill witches and so on. It's okay to do that, if this is really God speaking. But all these bad ideas tell me it is not God speaking, but humans claiming to speak for God. If God tells me to kill a bunch of people,
He's not going to at this point.
He did back then, and it's the same God. Jesus did not repudiate the Old Testament God's commands. The Old Testament God is Jesus' God.
It was a different time.
Doesn't make any difference. You don't go killing neighboring tribes and taking their land. You don't believe in a God who tells you to do that. Killing relatives. We talked about Islam a bit. Relatives who leave the religion are regarded by many Muslims to be deserving of death. So Christianity, it's the same thing. You're supposed to kill relatives that leave the religion.
The Bible doesn't say to do that.
No?
No.
No? Deuteronomy 13:6-10. I'll read it for you. If your brother, the son of your mother, your son or your daughter, the wife of your bosom, or your friend who is as your own soul, secretly entices you, saying, "Let us go and serve other gods," you shall not consent to him or listen to him. Nor shall your eye pity him, nor shall you spare him or conceal him, but you shall surely kill him. You shall surely kill him. Your hand shall be the first against him to put him to death.
You're
going to make some excuse. Go ahead.
Because they were the Israelites. They had, at that time, Israel was a theocracy. So God was present and His word was their law. Rebellion against that was punishable by death.
So you are agreeing with me. You are supposed to kill relatives who leave the religion.
No, that was back then.
But I thought God's words were forever.
God has different ways in which He has dealt with people throughout human history. There are different covenants, dispensations, administrations in His overall redemptive plan.
So He's got to be very clear then. What applies to when? He has to say, at this point, I don't want you to kill apostates anymore. He never says that. Where in the Bible does it say that that command doesn't apply anymore? Nowhere. Jesus should have clearly said, I am hereby rescinding that command in Deuteronomy 13, but He never did. Instead, the Bible in several places says that God's words are forever.
Yes.
And Jesus Himself said, not a jot or tittle will be changed.
But the situation is different. There is no longer a theocracy, a country ruled by God. That's the difference. God is not present in a particular country today.
And He was back then.
He was then, yes.
See, that's very unconvincing to me. That God was literally present and speaking to people, but He's not anymore.
But it was entirely different for the nation of Israel.
I disagree. People were people. You don't kill your relatives if they decide to follow a different religion. and not only kill them, but stone them to death. That is a horrible way to die. See, that's why the hypothetical is very important. You have to imagine what that was actually like. It's not just some cut and dried execution. No, it was a very prolonged, agonizing death. It's a horrendous way to die.
It is a horrible way to die, so you should not depart from the law of God.
Otherwise, that will happen. That is your just punishment. You have a mean God, one I will never accept. Now, the God that I believe in the probability of is also mean, the problem of evil. But he's not as definitively mean and evil as yours is. My God is a very mixed entity. He gives us beautiful sunsets, but also gives our children fatal diseases. This is where I give the atheist perspective credence. They have a good argument with the problem of evil. God has created more evil than is necessary, gratuitous, pointless evil. So what did you say that is why you should believe in your God, so you don't get stoned to death? See, that is a religion of violence. Oh, and now I remember what I was going to say earlier. An atheist, Dan Barker, says that any ideology that depends on the threat of violence is morally bankrupt. And I agree with him. Killing witches. Moving on to a different Christian, remember that these conversations are a composite of various Christians. So on Halloween you were in Salem, Massachusetts, handing out Bibles.
Yeah, we do that.
Did you kill any witches when you were there?
No.
See, you're not even taking that question seriously. Of course you wouldn't kill alleged witches, but that is what your Bible says to do. You shall not allow a witch to live.
Right, in the Old Testament, yeah, there's a lot of harsh stuff there. You'd get stoned for blasphemy.
Yeah, my point would be that God, the Old Testament God, was Jesus' God. So whatever the Old Testament God says, that's what Jesus agrees with.
Right.
But I don't believe in killing witches. You don't believe in killing witches, and yet you trust this book?
I wish I had a little more firepower here to help you with this issue. I mean, you have good questions.
I've talked to some top Christian apologists, and they didn't have any good answers for me either. They usually skirted the issues.
Yeah, I don't like skirting the issues.
So you better go out and kill some witches. You can find some in Salem.
That would be taking things too far. I mean, that is not proscriptive for us today. Even if it were, I probably couldn't actually do it.
Myself, I wouldn't struggle with it at all. I would immediately say, no, this is wrong. I mean, some beliefs say if people want to believe in UFOs, okay, fine, okay, as long as it doesn't harm anybody. But belief in witches, that did harm people. A lot of women in Europe in the Middle Ages were killed as alleged witches. And right here in our own state, 19 people were hanged because they were alleged witches.
Yeah, that was an extreme level of Puritanism.
Yeah, but it was an outgrowth of what is presented in your Bible. Killing witches for having demonic connections. Ideas have consequences, and bad ideas have bad consequences. More Christian firepower, a couple of professors joined us. Right here in Massachusetts, 19 people were hanged because they were alleged witches. There's no such thing as witches, people who can do magical evil things. But those people were hanged because of this book, because of your God who said not to allow witches to live.
Because of how it was interpreted.
How else can it be interpreted? The language is crystal clear. Do not let witches live.
You can't say that it's because of this book they hung witches.
Yes, I can, because it is. It is because of this book.
That's a very broad generalization. See, that's the thing. That's another thing we teach here, the principles of biblical interpretation.
No. It's not a broad generalization. The book specifically says do not allow a witch to live. And the people in Salem back then were operating within a biblical worldview. How do you interpret not to allow a witch to live as do allow a witch to live? How do you do that? Except dishonestly.
If we know about the circumstances of what happened at those witch trials, those people were not really witches. I don't believe they were witches.
I don't think they were witches either. That's not the point. The point is that people thought they were witches, and they hung them. And sanction for doing that came from this book.
I think the Salem episode is a sty in the eye of Christianity and is a horrible witness to Christianity.
But it's an accurate witness. This is what your book teaches, that we don't tolerate witches. We kill them.
But the problem was there's a couple of issues like who runs government, and another who renders judgment, and then the whole idea of how do you determine a witch. And I think the evidence there in Salem was not reasonable evidence.
But that's not the point.
It was a factor, though.
But the why and how they found them guilty is not the point. The point is they went ahead and hanged innocent people because of what this book says, that witches exist and we do not allow them to live. This book gave them that principle, without which they would not have had the approval to hang these people.
Well, certainly witches represent those who turn away from God. I mean, this is really what a witch or a sorceress does, is to contact the dead, to try to understand the future, to tell people things that only God knows.
But if you talk to modern day witches, people who believe in the Wiccan religion, most of them want to do good. Their central moral tenet is not to harm people. They are not the traditional perception of nasty people doing evil things through magical spells.
Do you believe in witches?
No, I don't believe in witches, but I know followers of the Wiccan religion believe in witches, good witches. They basically revere nature, and they think they're in touch with nature to the extent that they can produce magical spells for the good, as I mentioned.
So you believe in witches?
No, I don't believe in witches, that people can actually do magical things, but this book does.
So why do you not believe that witches were hung?
I don't. Those people were not witches. They were alleged witches. I believe alleged witches were hung. You are avoiding the issue, which is that this book not only believes in witches, but insists you kill them.
I don't know that much about the history here in Salem.
But not just here. Alleged witches were hung by the thousands in Europe in the Middle Ages. I blame this book for enabling people to commit these atrocities against mostly older women who somebody didn't like for whatever reason.
And also in history, a lot of Christians were hung.
That's not the point. Maybe Christians were hung. That's not a defense for hanging alleged witches. Both hanging witches and hanging Christians are wrong.
I wish I could answer for all of Christendom, for all of time, and explain away some of the ill-advised, ungodly things that Christians have done. I wish I could, but I can't.
I think you can't, because there is no good answer. They were following the teachings of this book, which to me makes this book just plain wrong. Conclusion. I think the proper direction for human beings to take is to believe in a more reasonable God than the Christian one, or to adopt atheism, or adopt hopeful agnosticism, something other than Christianity, which depends on willfully ignoring all the negatives. One of the great immoralities of the Bible is its condoning of slavery. I'll be posting a video of my conversations with Christians on that topic in the coming weeks. I've come to the conclusion that the entire edifice of Christianity can be refuted by one word. One word. Property. Any religion that refers to human beings as property of other human beings is a false religion. Is that not obvious? Well, not to indoctrinated Christians living in their bubble, supported by 2,000 years of dedicated rationalizing, deflecting, and making excuses.